Hello, friends. Welcome to Storycraft. On this channel, you will enjoy world top stories. Let's view the video. The humble cook who became a king's advisor, from kitchen fires to royal desires. The morning smoke of a forgotten village. In the quiet village of Eld Hollow, nestled between rolling hills and whispering woods, life moved to the rhythm of tradition. Smoke curled lazily from stone chimneys, mingling with the scent of fresh bread and the distant sound of goats bleating. Among the humble folk was a young man named Corwin, a cook, not by trade, but by passion. Corwin's tiny clay house was nothing more than 4 walls and a hearth, yet every dawn it filled with warmth and flavor. His hands, worn from years of kneading and chopping, moved with the grace of an artist. But no one saw him as more than the soup boy, just a cook, nothing more. A hunger the village couldn't satisfy. Corwin was different. Where others saw food as fuel, he saw a story. He whispered to herbs and listened to the crackle of oil as if it spoke to him. He could turn foraged mushrooms and old potatoes into feasts that made grown men weep. But in Eld Hollow, dreams didn't buy bread, and ambition was considered dangerous. The villagers warned him. "You'll cook yourself into trouble," they'd say, half joking. The king's not looking for kitchen poets. Still, Corwin dreamt. Every dish he made was a rebellion. A quiet promise to himself that he was meant for more than peeling roots in a forgotten corner of the world. The day the stranger arrived. It was late autumn when a cloaked stranger arrived at Corwin's door. The man's horse was foaming, his eyes sharp beneath a travel-worn hood. He introduced himself only as Aldrin, and asked for a warm meal in exchange for a silver coin. Corwin didn't hesitate. He cooked what little he had, a stew of root vegetables, smoked meat, and wild herbs. He served it with flatbread, browned to perfection, and a plum preserve that no longer existed anywhere but in Eld Hollow. The stranger ate in silence, then asked a strange question. "Have you ever cooked for a king?" Corwin laughed. "No, but I imagine a king's appetite is no different than a man's. Only his plate is shinier." Aldrin smiled, but he said no more. A royal invitation, wrapped in secrecy. 2 weeks passed, and life returned to its usual rhythm, until the royal carriage arrived. It clattered through the village like a thunderclap. Armed guards stepped out, reading a scroll aloud. "By decree of King Alric III, the cook Corwin of Eld Hollow is summoned to the royal court." Gasps echoed. Corwin stood frozen, apron still tied, flour dusting his sleeves. The village baker dropped a tray of buns. Old Marta fainted. No one had ever been summoned by name. Not a peasant. Not a cook. As Corwin climbed into the carriage, hearts whispered behind closed windows. What could the king possibly want with him? Into the lion's den, the journey to the capital took days. Corwin saw sights he'd only heard about in the tales told by passing traders. Castles taller than trees, rivers that glowed with reflected starlight, and soldiers in armor polished like mirrors. Yet none of it filled him with awe, only questions. At the castle gates, a steward met him with a frown. "A cook? This must be a mistake." But the seal on the parchment was unmistakable, golden and grim, bearing the lion of House Alric. Corwin, was led through towering halls, past nobles who sneered at his simple garb. At last, he was brought before the king. A royal test of fire and flavor, King Alric, fierce and brooding, leaned forward on his marble throne. "You made a stew," he said. "For my scout Aldrin. He said it cured the fever that had plagued him for weeks. Said your food has magic." Corwin bowed low. "Only flavor, your majesty." The king waved to the court chef. "Prepare a feast," he said. "Then let this village cook prepare the same with whatever ingredients he desires. Let us see if the rumors hold." Whispers rose like birds in flight. Corwin was given access to the royal kitchen. He walked through it with awe. Shelves of saffron, basil from foreign lands, spices worth more than his house. But he didn't use any of them. He asked only for turnips, onion, old salted beef, and a sprig of wild thyme. The court chef scoffed. The nobles snickered. Then he began to cook. The silence of the court. When the dishes were served, the court buzzed with laughter until they tasted Corwin's stew. One by one, their smiles faded into wide-eyed wonder. A duke wept. A duchess clutched her chest and whispered, "It tastes like home." The king said nothing. He only finished every drop and looked up. "You will stay," he declared. "Not in the kitchens, but at my table. I need someone who understands flavor and truth." Gasps followed. The cook from Eld Hollow had just stepped into history. A meal that changed the kingdom. The first supper among wolves. Corwin sat at the royal table, eyes darting between jeweled goblets and golden cutlery. Around him, ministers, generals, and noblemen whispered behind silk sleeves. They didn't see a cook. They saw an intruder. An outsider who had stirred something in their king with nothing more than a wooden spoon. The king raised his hand, silencing the hall. "Tonight," he said, "our guest prepares the meal. Let your tongues be your judges." The dishes were simple: roasted root vegetables glazed with honey and herbs, seared river fish on a bed of lemon greens, and the same stew that had brought him here. There were no peacock tongues, no foreign spices, just warmth, memory, and truth. And as they tasted, the room fell into silence once more. Whispers beneath the wine. Later that night, while goblets clinked and flutes played softly, the whispers turned venomous. "He's a peasant. A trickster, perhaps, a sorcerer. Food like that doesn't come from the hands of a commoner." But King Alric was unmoved. He leaned back in his chair, watching his court react, not just to the meal, but to Corwin himself. In a world of masks and motives, the cook had done the impossible. He made powerful men feel, and that terrified them. An empty throne and a secret meeting. 3 days later, the king vanished from court. His advisors panicked. No word, no sign, only a sealed letter left with the captain of the guard. Inside, a single line: "Until I taste the truth again, I will not return." The court spiraled into chaos. Accusations flew. Nobles eyed the throne like starving vultures. But late that evening, Corwin was summoned, secretly, silently. He found the king not far from the castle, in a crumbling inn once used by traveling merchants. Alric sat alone by the fire, a cloak around his shoulders, and a half-empty bowl of stew before him. "I needed to feel something real," the king muttered. "Not gold, not politics, just flavor that tells no lies." Corwin sat across from him. "You don't need a cook, Your Majesty. You need truth, and the court serves you none." Alric met his eyes. "Then you will help me find it." The Banquet of Betrayal. A week later, a grand banquet was announced. The king returned to the palace with newfound clarity and declared the feast would mark a new chapter for the kingdom. Foreign ambassadors, rival lords, and even hidden enemies were invited. Whispers called it reckless. Corwin was given full command of the kitchens. The royal chefs protested, furious that a village-born man now issued orders in gold-trimmed halls. But the king had spoken, and no one dared defy him. Corwin cooked not to impress, but to reveal. Every dish was tailored not for taste alone, but to stir something deeper. He used cinnamon to remind a foreign general of childhood. He roasted lamb the way the Queen's father had liked it, soft and simple. He served the Prime Minister a version of his mother's rice dish, the one she'd made before her execution. One by one, emotions surfaced. Eyes welled. Hearts faltered. And just as Corwin had predicted, so did the masks. A knife hidden in bread. Midway through the feast, a noble choked, not on food but on fury. He stood, red-faced and trembling, pointing at Corwin with trembling fingers. "This is treachery," he barked. "Witchcraft. He poisons us with memories." The hall tensed. Guards stepped forward, but King Alric raised a hand. "No poison," he said softly. "Only truth." He turned to the noble. "And what are you afraid of being reminded of, Lord Varric? The night you betrayed your cousin for your seat in this hall? The letter you sent to Rivemore promising loyalty to another crown?" Silence. Lord Varric's hands shook. "You have no proof." "I don't," Alric replied. "But your reaction just fed the truth to every man and woman in this room." The taste of revolution. That night, power shifted, not with bloodshed, not with steel, but with flavor. The banquet became legend. Corwin's food didn't just nourish, it exposed, healed, and revealed. The king began holding private dinners, each one with a purpose, to read men's hearts through their plates. Deals were made in silence, lies unraveled over shared stew. And Corwin, once just a cook from a nameless village, now sat at the table not as a servant, but as an advisor. Not for his title, not for his lineage, but for his gift. He could feed the soul and see what it hungered for. Secrets stirred in the royal pot, shadows in the steam. The royal kitchens burned with life. Fires roared, knives clattered, and pots bubbled with flavor and whispers. Corwin moved through the chaos like a conductor, stirring sauces while listening to secrets. Servants gossiped, guards muttered, ministers' aides exchanged glances over fresh-baked bread, and Corwin listened to it all. What began as a job had become something else, a stage, a vantage point. He realized something no one else did. In the palace, the kitchen was the one place where the powerful let their guard down. And the stew wasn't the only thing boiling. The Queen's Taste for Deception. Queen Elira rarely visited the kitchens, but when she did, silence followed her. Regal, cold, and impossibly elegant, she walked among the cooks like a queen among ants. One evening, she arrived unannounced. "I crave something simple," she said. "Something forgotten." Corwin offered her warm berry tart, one made with wild fruits from Eldhollow, the kind peasants picked for their children. She took a bite, and for a moment, her composure cracked. "A taste from childhood," she murmured. Then, under her breath, she added, "Dangerous. What memory can do?" She looked Corwin dead in the eyes. "Be careful what you stir, cook. Some things are best left burned." She left without another word. A recipe with no name. In the weeks that followed, Corwin noticed ingredients going missing. Spices that couldn't be replaced, herbs from the royal greenhouse, bottles of aged wine that vanished without trace. When he asked, the stewards deflected, the guards shrugged, and the head chef avoided his gaze. Something was being prepared outside the kitchen. Something secret. Then came the parchment. No seal, no sender. It was slipped under his door one night. "You've stirred too much. Stop asking, or you'll be next in the pot." An unexpected ally in an apron. Talia, the scullery maid, was the only one who didn't treat Corwin like royalty or a threat. She had a sharp tongue and sharper eyes. One night, while peeling onions, she leaned in close. "You're not crazy," she whispered. "Something's cooking beneath this palace, and it isn't your soup." She led Corwin through back corridors, through dust-choked wine cellars, until they reached a forgotten room. Inside, a makeshift kitchen, smaller, hidden, filled with exotic ingredients, and logs, detailed recipes written in unfamiliar hands. At the bottom of the pile, a strange concoction, a sedative. Harmless in small doses, deadly if built up over time, and beside it, the Queen's initials. Dinner for a dead king. Corwin rushed to the king's chamber. That night's meal had already been delivered. He burst into the room just as Alric raised his fork. Guards reached for their swords, but the king raised a hand. Corwin pointed to the dish. "Don't eat. That sauce, it's not mine." Alric narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Corwin knelt and described the hidden kitchen, the missing spices, the sedatives, the Queen's initials, the warning note, every detail. Silence hung heavy, and then the king stood. He ordered the dish sent to the royal apothecary. Hours passed. The result was clear. Poison. Slow, subtle, untraceable. A killer served over time. A throne, tipped by taste. At dawn, Queen Elira was summoned to the great hall. She arrived dressed in silver and calm as ice. "You accuse me of treason," she said softly. "With nothing but a cook's word and a bowl of sauce?" The king didn't respond. Instead, he summoned the royal tasters, the apothecaries, the guards. Each confirmed Corwin's claims. And then the final blow. Talia stepped forward with the recipe logs in hand, sealed, signed, and stained with berry juice from that tart. the one the queen had eaten in a moment of unguarded memory. She had returned to that secret place after all. The court held its breath. The queen looked once more at Corwin. "I warned you," she said coldly. "You've stirred something that will never settle." The cook who burned a crown. The queen was exiled, her name erased from official records. But her shadow lingered, whispered down marble halls and behind silk drapes. Trust in the court fractured. Ministers began watching their meals with suspicion. And Corwin, he was no longer just the cook. He was the king's trusted mouth, the keeper of truth served hot. No plan moved forward without his insight. Not because he was clever with politics, but because he could read people the way others read scrolls. Through spice, through scent, through silence. He hadn't just uncovered a plot. He had dismantled a throne with a ladle and a handful of herbs. Whispers, plots, and a cook's courage. The smoke never cleared. Though Queen Elira was gone, her presence still lingered. Servants walked softer, ministers whispered more often, and even the king kept a blade within reach. The palace felt colder. Paranoia, once hidden, now wore crowns of its own. Corwin felt the shift. Every meal was inspected, every ingredient questioned. He wasn't just a cook anymore. He was the king's shield, forged in fire and flavor. But shadows were moving again. A knife behind a smile. Lord Renwick, the king's oldest ally, began showing unusual interest in the kitchens. He visited often, always with compliments and flattery. He praised Corwin's dishes, asked about his methods, even offered rare spices from his personal collection. But Corwin saw the cracks. Renwick never ate the food he praised. He brought his own wine. He avoided meals meant for the inner court. And, late one night, Corwin found one of his herbs, baneberry, deadly in the wrong hands, missing from the locked spice chest. Talia's warning. Talia returned to Corwin's side, sharper than ever. She'd overheard servants whispering in the lower halls, Renwick meeting secretly with foreign envoys, promises exchanged, coin passed. One word kept surfacing like a bad smell. Succession. The king had no heir, and if Alric fell by blade, by poison, or by vote, Renwick would be the natural choice. Respected, connected, feared. Corwin realized the court had only paused its treachery. It hadn't ended. The courage to cook the truth. At the next banquet, Corwin prepared a feast, unlike any other. He served no wine, only clear water infused with calming herbs. He used simple ingredients, barley, onion, fresh-caught fish, all sourced from within the castle. No outside hands had touched a thing. But the centerpiece was the stew, a flavor from the king's childhood, a flavor Renwick claimed to remember, from his youth as well. Yet when he tasted it, Renwick choked, coughed, then smiled too quickly. The king's gaze narrowed. "You've had this before, haven't you?" Renwick nodded, a little too fast. But Corwin spoke softly. "This recipe uses a herb that grows only in Eldhollow, my home. I brought the seeds myself. You couldn't have tasted this unless you'd been there. Renwick froze. He had never stepped foot in Eld Hollow. Boiled lies and broken masks. The court erupted. Accusations flew. Renwick stammered, then fled the hall. He didn't make it far. The guards, already alerted by Corwin, seized him outside the great doors. In his coat, letters of conspiracy, sealed with foreign wax. The king rose from his seat, fury and betrayal burning in his eyes. But it was Corwin who approached Renwick and whispered, "You should have watched your seasoning." A cook's place among kings. By dawn, Renwick was gone, banished to the icy reaches of the kingdom. The king turned to Corwin. "You saved my life again, with broth and bravery." Corwin didn't bow. "I just listened, Your Majesty, to the pots, to the people and the lies they tried to swallow. Crowned by wisdom, not by blood." A throne in turmoil. Winter settled over the kingdom, but peace did not. The nobles feared more poison, the people feared war, and the king, aging, weary, and childless, feared something worse. A legacy lost to corruption. Whispers of succession filled the halls once more. Names rose and fell like embers in wind, none worthy, none trusted. Except one. A name spoken not by lords, but by laborers, not in the courts, but in the kitchens. Corwin. Crown of clay, not gold. The king summoned his council. One seat at the table was different. No jewels, no crest, just an apron laid across the chair. Corwin sat, unfamiliar and unafraid. "We need a successor," the king said. "One who understands the people, one who knows the taste of hunger." Eyes turned, some in laughter, others in rage. "A cook?" Lord Farnell scoffed. "Will he rule with a spoon?" Corwin met his gaze calmly. "I've seen truth in every bowl, lies in every empty plate, and in this palace I've found more poison in words than in food." The room fell silent. The trials of trust. The king devised a test, not of bloodline, but of wisdom. 3 tasks, each secret, each deadly in its own way. The first, solve a dispute between 2 war-torn provinces without drawing a sword. Corwin cooked a meal using ingredients from both lands and served it at a shared table. He invited their leaders, broke bread with them, and listened. By dessert, peace was signed, not in ink, but in understanding. The second, find the traitor still hiding among the nobles. Corwin invited them to a dinner. Each dish bore a symbol, each spice an origin. One noble, in pretending to know the taste of a faraway kingdom, revealed knowledge only a conspirator would know. He was arrested before dessert. The third, restore the people's faith. Corwin walked the streets, fed the hungry, taught the poor how to plant and cook. He didn't promise riches. He offered dignity. And that proved mightier than any royal decree. A crown offered, a spoon raised. In the throne room, the king stood before his court. His crown glistened, but his voice trembled. "I name Corwin, son of no noble house, heir to my wisdom, and steward of my people." Gasps echoed. Some knelt. Others protested. But Corwin didn't take the crown. He held up his wooden spoon, the same one he used in Eld Hollow. "I don't need gold on my head," he said, "just truth in my hands." A kingdom reborn by fire and flavor. Under Corwin's guidance, the kingdom changed. Ministers dined beside farmers. Laws were explained at bakeries. Every royal policy was served with a free meal in the town square. Injustice was no longer swallowed quietly. And lies, well, they had a distinct taste now. And so the cook, who never sought power, became the advisor who reshaped a kingdom, not with blood, not with fear, but with wisdom. The kind only hunger could teach. Thanks for watching. Subscribe our channel Storycraft for more interesting videos.